Chapter 1. The Opening Hook. They called him just a mechanic. Grease under his fingernails, oil stains on his coveralls, hands that looked like they'd spent decades fixing engines instead of holding weapons. The younger techs would joke about the old man who never talked about his past, until someone got curious about that faded patch on his toolbox, a unit insignia most people had never seen. What they found when they Googled it changed everything. Welcome to the Real Life Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of respect, hidden identity, and forgotten heroes, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they're never forgotten. Chapter 2. The Quiet Mechanic. Martinez Auto Shop sat on the edge of town in the industrial district, squeezed between noisy truck stops and old car lots. From the outside, it looked like any ordinary repair shop: greasy floors, old calendars on the walls, and a three-man crew working under a drafty metal roof. But customers who came here noticed one thing: the old mechanic never charged military folks full price. Frank Torres had been here for 15 years, 60 years old, graying hair, and hands weathered by time and elements. He arrived every morning at exactly 7, filled his thermos with black coffee, and quietly began his work. He wasn't talkative, wasn't the joking type. He just did his job and went home. The younger apprentices would speculate about him. Must be former military, Tommy, the newest 23-year-old crew member, would say. You can tell by the way he looks at things. But Frank never confirmed these assumptions. He didn't talk about his past, didn't talk about family. It was as if his life had started the day he walked through those shop doors. Frank's workbench was in the farthest corner of the shop, away from the main entrance. His tools were organized, clean, everything in its place. But those who looked carefully would notice one detail: a faded patch sewn inside his old toolbox. Very old, very worn, the kind where you could barely make out the symbols. Chapter 3. The Discovery. Tommy noticed this patch in his 3rd month. While Frank was out at lunch, searching for an engine part, he saw it while rummaging through the toolbox. He took a picture but didn't ask anything at the moment. He respected the old man's privacy. But curiosity began eating at him. That evening at home, staring at the photo on his phone, he wondered. The symbols were unclear, but it was definitely a military unit patch. He opened Google Lens and uploaded the photo. The search results shocked Tommy. Delta Force Operational Detachment, it read. Classified Counterterrorism Unit. Details restricted. Below that, an addition. The existence of this unit is not officially acknowledged. Operations are classified. Tommy stared at the screen, then thought about Frank's morning arrivals, how he scanned every room before entering, how he never sat with his back to a door. Suddenly, everything made sense. Chapter 4. The Confrontation. The next morning, when Frank arrived, Tommy looked at him with different eyes. The old man was the same coveralls, same silence, same routine. But now Tommy could see the precision in his movements, how he constantly checked exits, his reflexes to sounds, how his hands were used to more than just wrenches and screwdrivers. Frank, Tommy said, gathering courage, that patch in your toolbox. Frank froze. He looked up at Tommy. Fear flashed in his eyes. Chapter 5. The Truth Unveiled. Carlos approached. Frank, were you really in that unit? For 30 years, Frank said quietly. 3 different continents, in places we never existed, doing jobs we never did. Officially, I'm a technician working at Martinez Auto Shop. Nothing else. Tommy was excited. But what did you do? Which operations were you in? Frank's face hardened. Young man, some stories aren't told, some names aren't spoken, some places aren't even shown on maps. I'm the keeper of those stories, not the teller. But why are you working here? Carlos asked. I mean, after retiring from Delta Force, you could go anywhere you want. Frank smiled, this time with a more genuine smile. I wanted to be here. Quiet, peaceful, a place where nobody knows me. After 30 years living in shadows, you want to be normal. Chapter 6. The Explosives Expert. Tommy still couldn't understand. But this is huge. You must be a hero. You must have medals. Medals aren't given in covert operations, Tommy. Our job was things nobody knew about. Our measure of success was that nobody heard our names. The quieter we stayed, the more successful we were. Carlos asked curiously, weren't you ever afraid? I mean, in those kinds of operations. Frank paused, thought. Fear was part of the job, but you learned to control fear. You learned to trust your team, and sometimes you learned that the only way out of very bad situations was silence. What was your team like? Tommy asked. Frank's eyes went distant. 5 of us, like brothers, each with different specializations. I was the explosives expert, EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, bombs, mines, IEDs. If it could explode, I could neutralize it. Tommy's eyes widened. Is that why your hands never shake? I'd noticed how steady your hands are, even when repairing engines. Precision engine work is child's play compared to neutralizing explosives, Frank said. Cut the wrong wire, the engine won't start. Cut the wrong wire. He didn't finish the sentence. Chapter 7. The lost brother Carlos asked, what happened to your teammates? Frank's face changed. He suddenly looked older. 2 retired, returned to normal life. 1 became a security consultant for a private company. 1. He stopped. 1 didn't come back from the last mission. Silence fell over the shop. Engine sounds, outside traffic, everything seemed to fade away. I'm sorry, Tommy said quietly. You don't need to apologize. That was the risk of the job. We all knew it. Mike knew it. But someone had to do that job. Frank cleaned his hands with a rag. When I think of Mike, I want to see the work he proudly did. Working in this shop, helping normal people, would be honorable for him too. Chapter 8. 33 years of service. How long did you do this job? Carlos asked. My first mission was in 1985, Frank said. My last mission was in 2018. 33 years. 9 different countries, more operations than I can remember. Tommy tried to calculate. You started this job at 25, 23. Before that, regular infantry, then 2 years in Rangers, then selected for Delta. Back then I was younger, braver, and I think much more stupid, he laughed. So what did you do with this patch? What missions were you in? Frank shook his head. Tommy, the only thing I can tell you is this. There are very bad people in the world who want to kill innocent people. Our job was to stop them. Sometimes it was rescue missions, sometimes prevention, sometimes cleanup work, but always silent, always secret. Were you ever wounded? Frank rolled up his shirt sleeve, showed an old scar. Mogadishu, 1993, sniper round. Luckily, only flesh wound, no bone damage. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital, then returned to duty. Carlos looked at the scar. Doesn't it hurt anymore? Sometimes it aches in cold weather, but it's not a big wound. The real wound is here, he pointed to his chest. Sometimes I can't sleep at night. I have dreams about past operations. They call it PTSD, but you get used to it over time. Chapter 9. The Price of Silence. Tommy asked, did your family know what kind of work you did? Frank's face saddened. Family. That's a complicated subject. My wife didn't know what kind of jobs I did. She only knew I traveled frequently, that I had a dangerous job. We divorced in 2005. That was the price of never being home. Do you have children? I have a daughter, Jennifer. She's 35 now, lives in Los Angeles. I have 2 grandchildren, but she doesn't talk to me. Why? Carlos asked quietly. Because I was never there as a father. I missed birthdays, missed school plays, missed graduation ceremonies. While she was growing up, I was on the other side of the world saving other people's children. I couldn't provide security for my own daughter. Heavy silence filled the shop. All 3 were lost in their own thoughts. Chapter 10. Hidden Identity. Tommy broke the silence. Do you regret it? Choosing this job? Frank thought for a long time. That's not an easy question. On one hand, I know we tried to make the world a safer place. I know how many terrorist attacks we prevented, how many innocents we saved. But on the other hand, I lost my family. I lost my peace. Are you happy here now? Carlos asked. Frank looked around, greasy vehicles, old tools, the simple mechanics world. I have peace here. For the first time in a long time, I have peace. Nobody asks who I am. Nobody wonders what I did. I'm just Frank, Frank the mechanic. And that's enough. Tommy was still curious. But are you still in contact with your old teammates? From time to time. Rick lives in Florida, has a fishing business. Dave is in Colorado, does mountain guiding. We meet once a year, we remember Mike. We don't talk about those days, we just remember. Why is the patch still in your toolbox? Tommy asked. Frank looked at the patch, touched it lovingly. Because I don't want to forget who I am. This patch isn't just a piece of metal. This is the memory of my lost friends. This is the symbol of the sacrifices we made. This is proof of my youth, of the years I served my country. Carlos asked, what happens if other people find out? I mean, like Tommy did? Nothing happens, Frank said, laughing. Because officially no such unit exists. I officially never served in Delta Force. All my operations are classified, all my files destroyed. I'm just Frank Torres, mechanic. Tommy pulled out his phone. Should I delete that photo? Frank shook his head. No, keep it. But be careful. This kind of information can be dangerous in the wrong hands. We still have enemies. There are still people looking for us. Looking for you? Carlos asked worriedly. From time to time. That's why I changed my name. That's why I moved frequently. Before coming to Martinez's shop, I lived in 5 different cities. I'm safe here, but I'm always alert. Tommy was surprised. Frank Torres isn't your real name? No, my real name is Frank Thompson. But Thompson died, Torres lives. Torres is a normal mechanic. Thompson was a deadly operator. Chapter 11. The Last Mission. Has nobody ever suspected until now? You suspected, Frank laughed, but in 15 years you're the first person to notice that patch. Most people don't see what they don't want to see. Carlos asked thoughtfully, what if you're called back? If the government calls you back to duty? Frank shook his head. I'm too old now. At 60, I'm not in physical condition to do operations, but my knowledge, my experience is still valuable. Sometimes I do consulting, train young operators, but field operations are over. Do you miss it? That excitement, the adrenaline. Frank answered honestly, sometimes I miss it. I miss working with the team, I miss the pride felt when successfully completing a mission. But now there's a different kind of pride. When I repair a young soldier's car who comes here, when I help him return safely to his family, I feel proud. Tommy asked one more thing. So why do you never charge soldiers full price? Frank smiled. Because they're my brothers. When I was their age, I was in the world's most dangerous places. Now they're doing the same thing. If I can help by at least repairing their cars, I'm paying back my debt a little. Carlos asked, we shouldn't tell anyone about this conversation, should we? You can tell, Frank said, but who would believe it? In the internet age, everyone thinks they know everything. Real stories seem too ordinary to people now. Tommy asked, "What about death? How many times did you return from the brink of death?" Frank thought for a long time. "Tommy, that job was living nose to nose with death. Every mission had the possibility of death, but the real fear was losing teammates. Your own death is easier to accept. Your friend's death is not." "How did Mike die?" Carlos asked quietly. Frank's eyes filled with tears. 2018 on the Syrian border. Our last mission, hostage rescue operation. Everything was going as planned. We extracted the hostages. We were reaching the safe zone. Then an ambush. Mike protected me. He was shot in my place. Silence fell over the shop. Only distant traffic sounds could be heard. "Does his family know?" Tommy asked. "His family thinks Mike died in a traffic accident. That's the official story. Only we know the real story. And now you do too." Chapter 12. The burden of secrets, Carlos asked. "Isn't this a burden? Carrying so many secrets?" "It's a very heavy burden," Frank admitted. "Sometimes I can't sleep at night. I think about Mike. Sometimes I call my daughter Jennifer, but I don't know how to talk anymore. Because I can't share the most important parts of my life with her." Tommy asked, "Do you regret telling us?" Frank shook his head. "No. Actually, I feel relieved. For 15 years, I lived silently in this shop. Talking to you felt good. Telling Mike's story, keeping his memory alive felt good." "What should we do now?" Carlos asked. "Should we act like it was just an ordinary day?" Frank laughed. "Yes, act like it was an ordinary day. I'm still Frank Torres, mechanic. You're still my technicians. The only difference is now you know why I do some things differently." "Which things?" Tommy asked. "Why I always check exits. Why I never sit with my back to a door. Why my hands never shake. Why I treat military customers specially." Chapter 13. Mike's Memory. Carlos was thoughtful. "Frank, you're a very brave man, but I'm curious about something. Didn't you ever want a normal life? Marriage, children, peaceful retirement?" Frank smiled sadly. "I wanted it, Carlos. I wanted it very much. But some people aren't born for normal life. Some people have to sacrifice so others can live normally. I was one of those people." Tommy asked, "Are you sorry now for those choices?" "Yes and no," Frank said honestly. "I'll never regret serving my country, protecting innocents, trying to make the world safer. But I deeply regret losing my daughter, not having a happy marriage with my wife, not being able to be a normal father." "Have you ever tried to win Jennifer back?" Carlos asked. "Many times. I wrote letters, called, tried to visit, but she doesn't talk to me anymore. In our last conversation, she said, 'You were never my father, now it's too late.'" "She was right." Tommy asked quietly, "Have you ever seen your grandchildren?" Frank pulled out an old photo from his pocket. "Only once. Jennifer took me to the hospital when my second grandchild was born. I held him for 1 hour. That 1 hour was the most beautiful hour of my life." Carlos looked at the photo. "Very cute. What's his name?" "Michael. Named after Mike. Jennifer doesn't know, but he carries Mike's name. This is my way of keeping Mike's memory alive." Tommy asked, "How much longer will you work in this shop?" Frank looked around. "Until I die. This is my home now. This is where I found peace. This is where Frank Torres lives." Carlos spoke thoughtfully. "Frank, I respect you. And Mike, too. All your teammates, too. Thanks to your sacrifices, we live safely. Thank you, Carlos." These words are very valuable to me because most of the time nobody knows, nobody understands what sacrifices were made. Chapter 14. Advice to the Young. Tommy asked one last question. "Frank, What's your advice to young people, to those who might enter this kind of career? Frank became serious. Think very hard. This job isn't just adventure, isn't just adrenaline. This job means sacrifice. Sacrifice from your family, from normal life, from your peace. If they really choose this path, they should be ready to lose everything. But if they're strong, if their purpose is great, this job will make them the strongest person. And if they return, when they return, let them be quiet. Real power is in silence. Real honor is in not telling anyone. Real heroism is serving nameless and unknown. Carlos asked curiously, "What else is in this patch? Which operations does it symbolize?" Frank touched the patch. "Every operation is part of this patch, but I won't tell any of them, because telling would be disrespectful to the memories of friends who died in those operations. They died silently as martyrs. I remember them silently too." "Do you have other secrets in this shop?" Tommy asked jokingly. Frank smiled. "Tommy, a 33-year Delta operator, always has secrets. But these secrets aren't dangerous anymore. They're just an old man's memories." Chapter 15. Taking care of Mike's family from your peace. If they really choose this path, they should be ready to lose everything. But if they're strong, if their purpose is great, this job will make them the strongest person. And if they return, when they return, let them be quiet. Real power is in silence. Real honor is in not telling anyone. Real heroism is serving nameless and unknown. Carlos asked curiously, "What else is in this patch? Which operations does it symbolize?" Frank touched the patch. "Every operation is part of this patch, but I won't tell any of them, because telling would be disrespectful to the memories of friends who died in those operations. They died silently as martyrs. I remember them silently too." "Do you have other secrets in this shop?" Tommy asked jokingly. Frank smiled. "Tommy, a 33-year Delta operator, always has secrets. But these secrets aren't dangerous anymore. They're just an old man's memories." Carlos asked, "How can we help you? I mean, after learning this information." "Don't change anything," Frank said. "I'm still the same Frank. Still the same mechanic. The only difference is you now know why I do some things. Just, if I sometimes talk about Mike, listen. That boy's story needs to not be forgotten." Tommy asked, "Will you tell us more about Mike?" Frank's eyes lit up. "Mike was a wonderful person. He was very funny, made everyone laugh. He could create humor even from the worst situations, and as a family man, he was perfect too. He loved his wife Sarah very much, had 2 sons. Do they know what Mike really did? No. They think Mike was a normal soldier, died in a traffic accident. But I visit them from time to time. I help Sarah without her noticing. I established a scholarship fund so Mike's sons could go to university." Carlos was surprised. "In your own name?" "No, anonymous donation. Mike's sons don't know about their father's heroism, but at least they should feel that their father's friends haven't forgotten them." Tommy asked, "Isn't this a burden?" "Taking care of Mike's family? It's not a burden," Frank said determinedly. "This is my debt. Mike died in my place. If I can at least ensure his family's comfort, I'll have paid back part of my debt of gratitude to Mike." Chapter 16. The Annual Reunion. Carlos asked curiously, "What about your other teammates? How are Rick and Dave?" "Rick is very good. He established a fishing business, has a happy marriage. Dave does mountain guiding in Colorado. Both adapted to normal life. I had a bit more difficulty." "Why?" Tommy asked. "Because I stayed on duty the longest. Rick retired in 2010, Dave in 2015. I continued until 2018. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to return to normal life." Carlos asked, "Do you see them now?" Every year, on Mike's death anniversary, we meet. The three of us get together, remember, Mike? We don't talk about old days. We just remember. We drink a few beers, sit quietly. Where do you meet? Tommy wondered. At Arlington Cemetery, next to Mike's grave. Of course, Mike's real grave isn't there, but we meet there because many of our friends are buried there. Frank stopped, took a deep breath. Friends, I want to be honest with you. This conversation is very important for me. I hadn't been this open with anyone for 15 years. Thank you for listening. Chapter 17, The Sacred Patch. Tommy asked, Frank, one last question. Has anyone else seen this patch? No, Tommy. You're the first person. That's why I was surprised, because this patch is very secret, very special. You noticed it because you're curious, attentive. Carlos was thoughtful. Frank, do we have any responsibility with this information? Your only responsibility, Frank said seriously, is to tell this story to the right people. If you're going to tell it, don't tell it like a heroism story. Tell the truth. Tell the price of sacrifice. Because young people only see the exciting side of this job. They don't see the painful side. Do we have to tell? Tommy asked. No, you don't have to. But I want Mike's story, our story, not to be forgotten. Because if it's forgotten, these sacrifices lose their meaning. Carlos asked one last time, Frank, are you happy now? Frank thought for a long time, walked around the shop, touched his tools, looked at the patch. Happy? I don't know, but I'm at peace, and sometimes that's enough. Chapter 18, Brotherhood. Found Tommy stood up, approached Frank. Frank, I'm proud to be your friend. And knowing that Mike was your friend too. Carlos also stood up. Me too, Frank. You're a real hero, but a silent hero. Frank smiled, this time with a genuinely happy smile. Friends, let's get back to work. There are cars waiting outside, and normal Frank Torres has work to do. The three men quietly returned to their work, but now everything was different. The same sounds were in the shop, wrench clattering, engine sounds, footsteps. But now those sounds came with different meaning, because among them was the sound of a real hero. Frank looked at his toolbox, touched the faded patch. For the first time in 15 years, that patch wasn't secret anymore. Tommy and Carlos knew, and this knowledge made him feel like Mike's memory was continuing to live too. That evening when Frank went home, for the first time in a long time he slept peacefully, because he wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. Tommy and Carlos were carrying it too, and this was the most beautiful gift given to Mike's memory. The next morning when Frank came to work, Tommy and Carlos greeted him with different eyes, with respect, with love, with understanding. And Frank knew he was truly home now. These were truly his family. Good morning, Frank, Tommy said. Good morning, friends, Frank said. And for the first time saying this word, he truly felt like a friend, because sometimes the deepest secrets give birth to the strongest friendships. And Frank Torres, Frank the mechanic, was no longer alone. Chapter 19, Conclusion. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Frank? Someone who seemed ordinary but had an extraordinary past? Share their names in the comments. Tell their stories because at The Human Stories, we respect people who don't want recognition but deserve respect. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it, subscribe. Help us keep alive the voices of those who found strength in silence. Until next time. And until then, if you see an old patch, a faded medal, or a mysterious tattoo lying around, look twice. Maybe you're standing next to a real hero.